Science practice number 2, developing and using models. The next generation science standards outline 8 essential practices that are based on an analysis of what professional scientists do. By engaging in these practices, students gain an understanding and an appreciation of important scientific concepts, skills, and discoveries. Here we explore practice number 2, developing and using models. Models are essential to what scientists do, both in their research and in communicating their explanations. A model is a simplified representation of a system or idea that makes the central features of that system or idea explicit and visible. This image represents the structure of DNA. It is taken from Watson and Crick's classic 1953 scientific monograph and is the first accurate depiction of DNA's structure. Watson and Crick's model was based on their own scientific theory and the empirical data gathered by others. It is hand-drawn and resembles a twisted ladder. This iconic model is elegant in its simplicity. The DNA nucleotides are arranged into 2 strands that link together like the rungs of a ladder that is twisted into a double helical shape. During the exploration and design of their structural model, Watson and Crick began to understand how the genetic material might function inside a cell to carry out genetic instructions and make exact copies of itself. Experimental evidence supporting their structure and function connection was published in a series of 5 articles in the same issue of Nature. In 1962, Watson, Crick, and Maurice Wilkins jointly received the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for their discoveries. Models are used to represent abstract concepts or procedures. They emphasize the straightforward nature of something complex, and they help simplify things we don't understand. During research and development, the premise of a model is tested. The model is then refined with supporting empirical evidence. As such, models are pliable and can be adjusted. Modeling can help students establish, extend, and refine their knowledge, and give them a deeper understanding of fundamental principles. In practice, scientific modeling tools include diagrams, drawings, physical replicas, analogies, mathematical representations, and computer simulations. The goals of modeling are to allow students to represent a system, to help them develop questions and explanations, to generate data that can be used to make predictions, and to communicate ideas to others. So how does this look in the classroom? How can students create their own models, analyze them, and then revise them based on evidence? We will now explore the use of models in the classroom, again using the topic of genetics and heredity. So, as a teacher who wants to use models with students, where do you begin? The DNA structure model is a good starting point. Students can use this to build on their understanding of core ideas, such as the central dogma, or the causes or effects of DNA mutations. Let's look at each of these examples in more detail. The central dogma can be portrayed as a concept map that explains the relationship between genes and traits and depicts the flow of genetic information from DNA to RNA to a protein product. If your students are new to these ideas or are interpreting established models, you could present a model mix-and-match challenge. Begin by removing or obscuring the descriptive labels, and then provide a list of terms for students to try and match to the model, as shown here. Or you could cut the model into pieces, like a puzzle, to see if students can find logical connections and piece them back together. Students need to practice drawing to visually represent their thinking. Depicting their explanations in a drawing challenges them to make sense of the content. To begin this practice, You could provide a written description of a familiar scientific process and challenge students to sketch a model that gives a parallel pictorial explanation. Using a short story is fun and encourages student creativity. Students may initially struggle, but that's okay. It's important to scaffold their journey to understanding. Encourage students to label their diagrams with arrows, to include a key if helpful, and to consider abbreviations and drawing conventions. For example, nucleic acid sequences are typically written as a succession of letters in a row that reads from left to right, indicating the order of nucleotides within a sequence. The possible letters are A, C, G, and T, representing the 4 nucleotide bases of a DNA strand: adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. By convention, the sequences are usually presented from the 5' end to the 3' end. Students will also need to revise their models as they seek clarifications and discover new evidence to support or defend their claims. With repeated practice, students' models will become more accurate, better contextualized, and more meaningful. Once students understand and are comfortable with these initial models, they can apply and test them across alternate contexts and build their own models that predict and explain new events. This is important, since the central dogma can be easily redrawn or memorized. Students can move from simple illustrated models to 3-dimensional and computerized models. One challenge might be to have students develop an alternate DNA model to demonstrate their understanding of the possible outcomes of DNA mutations. Their model could correlate how changes in genetic information in DNA result in different versions of proteins, which might result in a genetic disease, such as sickle cell disease or cystic fibrosis. This modeling could also help explain how, in genetic engineering, scientists navigate and manipulate these principles to produce a desired trait or effect. Another important aspect of model building for students to understand is mathematical modeling. You can have students create simple mathematical models in the classroom using spreadsheets. For example, have students build a spreadsheet model of how a gene pool changes over time in response to natural selection, migration, and mutation. Using the spreadsheet they develop, students can explore how allele frequencies change over time, which will allow them to better understand the concepts of natural selection and evolution. To help students develop this mathematical model, have them complete the following steps. 1. Formulate the question. 2. Determine the basic ingredients. 3. Qualitatively describe the biological system. 4. Quantitatively describe the biological system. 5. Analyze the equations. 6. Perform checks and balances. 7. Relate their results to the original question. Scaffolding students' progress through the 7 steps will help them develop this mathematical model. Model-based inquiry is intrinsic to scientific research and is a dynamic means by which scientists can piece facts together, develop theories, reconcile conflicting data, and communicate ideas. It allows students to evaluate and construct scientific models that link these practices and lead to their own discoveries. This practice is a crucial tool for students to make sense of scientific data.